more that's coming, bro.
This is hilarious.
When we were negotiating with the Taliban, while President Trump was still the president, President Trump wanted to get out of Afghanistan, but he wanted a conditions-based withdrawal, meaning that you do what we tell you. When we were negotiating with the Taliban, while President Trump was still the president, President Trump wanted to get out of Afghanistan, but he wanted a conditions-based withdrawal, meaning that you do what we tell you to do, and then we will start pulling troops back slowly as long as you abide by our rules. It's President Trump and Mike Pompeo, and they are talking to Taliban leadership in the room, and they had one translator in the room. President Trump looked at the Taliban leader and said this: "I want to leave Afghanistan, but it's going to be a conditions-based withdrawal." And translator translated. And he said, "If you harm a hair on a single American, I'm going to kill you." And the translator goes, and Trump goes, "Tell him,
Translate.
Yes.
Tell him what I said.
Tell him what I said." Reached in his pocket, pulled out a satellite photo of the leader of the Taliban's home and handed it to him.
Shut up.
Got up and walked out the room. When we were negotiating with the Taliban, while President Trump was still the president, when we were When we were negotiating with the Taliban while President Trump was still the president, President Trump wanted to get out of Afghanistan, but he wanted a conditions-based withdrawal, meaning that you do what we tell you to do, and then we will start pulling troops back slowly as
Yep, we're
Good afternoon. This is episode 4 of the Generation Gap with Alan and Charlie. So we're going to talk about politics and beliefs in politics and that kind of stuff, and we're going to talk about the presidential inauguration. And
I need to hit record.
oh well, let's.
My bad.
We'll start all over.
There we are. We hit record.
Okay. Good afternoon. Welcome to episode 4 of the Generation Yap. We are going to be talking about politics and beliefs and how we should approach who we vote for, and talk about the president's agenda a little bit.
Aren't you scared of getting canceled?
Am I scared of getting canceled? No, I'm
with
not.
Our whole 40 subscribers at this rate. So.
Yeah, I'm not afraid of getting canceled.
It's from the ground up at this rate.
It's pretty amazing when you look at how far we've come in just the last year. So, first things first is our rights do not come from the government. Our rights come from God, and that is a clear distinction compared to any other document around the world, that the rights are not given by the government, but they are given by God. The First Amendment, the right to have free speech. And I can tell you, I view a lot of other content, and it's just it was absolutely amazing to sit there and watch and see a sitting president before the election, after January 2020, January 6, 2020, they removed him from the platform. They censored his speech. To me, it was unbelievable. I don't care who you are. You should have the right to say what you want to say. People have the right to be offended, and that's okay. But you do have the right to say what you want to say. And to see, defending the Constitution. And, that's part of our oath as enlisted person is to support and defend the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And the amazing thing was, even after he was deplatformed, and then you had Musk come in and buy Twitter, and then that kind of started the revival of free speech. It was just, like I said, it was just amazing to watch. We went from everybody had to watch what they said, because if you said the wrong thing, then people would try to cancel you. Just for your thoughts. I think about that. And when we think about that, what happens when you can only speak one message? Are you getting the truth, or is it propaganda? That's what you really got to look at. Is it the truth, or is it propaganda? I will tell you, from my experience, it was propaganda. And the reason I say it was propaganda is because during that same time, I'm sitting there watching the war on Ukraine kick off, and I'm sitting there and I'm watching the Russian state news speak their talking points about the Ukraine-Russia war, and they use the words misinformation, disinformation, right? And then I heard those same words coming out of the press secretary's, of Joe Biden. Can't think of her name. But they're using words misinformation, disinformation. Who decides what's true or not? You know, and that was one of the beautiful things about X. They got away with doing the censorship, and they just put community notes where if somebody said something, what did they do? They could back it up and they could go, well, this statement is not completely true. And they'd put the community notes link in the article, and anybody could add community notes. That was the beauty of X, where you had it where you could say your piece and people could counter it. And that, to me, that was absolutely critical of returning free speech to this country. You know, what concerned me the most was I heard my government, especially during COVID, sitting there censoring free speech, you know, talking about different things, different types of treatment for COVID, the vaccine, you know, and we got fed the line, trust the science, trust the science, trust the science. Well, it turns out your 6-foot social distancing mandate, completely made up. I mean, do the research. They found that it takes about 15 minutes, depending on the size of the area that you're enclosed with an infected person, where you could 15 to 30 minutes where you could get infected. Masks. Okay, I have worn my fair share of NBC gear, nuclear biological contamination gear in the military. And it just floored me that had it been me in that position when COVID came out, and they were saying no masks, and then all of a sudden they're like, yep, you got to mask up, you know, and people went just absolutely crazy. I would have loved to bring a young airman first class who teaches NBC, which is nuclear biological contamination, and have them explain to the American people how, unless you have a filter that is smaller than the particle size of the virus, it won't stop it. It may slow it down a little bit, but it ain't going to stop it by any means. And it would have solved the mask situation right away. But I mean, basically our government made it up on the fly, told us trust the science, and then when we come out of the pandemic, what do we find out? We find out that they just made everything up for the most part.
Yeah, that's,
Not everything.
as far as I understand, like the way a mask works is if you just imagine your grid of like string, you know, you have your little virus, then you have your weave of, you know, just yarn
Fabric.
of fabric, right? And a virus can just get through because they're just so incredibly small. They're
Yeah,
not-
if the weave, if the weave or the filter of the mask, if it is bigger than the virus, the size of the virus, it's not gonna stop the virus because it
Yeah.
can penetrate through the mask. Now, does it mean the virus could get hung up on the mask? Yes, I concede that it could get hung up on the mask, but it doesn't really matter. But then we locked everybody down, you know, because they kept saying, you know, oh, we just need this vaccine.
They're catching on my mic. I don't know how.
Huh. So anyway, when you look at that, it just absolutely floored me. I mean, think about it. It wasn't based on science. We locked down and we shut down businesses. But then when you start really critically thinking, and again, this is the point of the Generation Yap, is to get you critically thinking.
And I was listening to a business podcast the other day with Alex Ramosi. He talked about during COVID just how like 10% of gyms just died like in the first month. And then like 30% over the next year, just people were just giving up because they couldn't get people in their doors. It was really interesting. Like, and he tries to stay away from politics. But he's like, the reality was like people just couldn't run their businesses, you know, and it was just interesting.
Well, and then you look at what the government's answer was. It was shut down every small business and funnel everybody to the big box stores. That's what our government did. COVID was one of the biggest transfers of wealth in this country to corporations, if you really break it down to that. Because the mom and pops, you know, they had a hard time competing against the big box stores that have unlimited money to put up all these stupid restrictions, you know, the shields and all this good stuff that did nothing to protect anybody, really. But they routed everybody to the big box stores, but that was okay.
Did I work for you during COVID a little bit?
Let's see.
Tail end of it. Well, no, I was a freshman. I was working for you, a sophomore.
Sophomore.
And that's when it was kind of wrapping up. No, it was during my freshman year. So it's basically the end of it when I started working for you.
I think we were coming out of COVID when you started working for me, Alan. But when you really think about it, so, you know, they shut down the mom and pops. And honestly, I think the whole point was to, you know, the mom and pops were affected more than anything else. Most of the mom and pop corporate LLCs, corporations were affected, but when you really think about it, it was not based on science. But then you can take it one step further. So there was Senate hearings on COVID, right? And Dr. Fauci got up there and testified. And our government, it's basically come out that our government paid for that gain of function research in Wuhan, and it got out of the lab. That's basically the leading theory right now, and pretty much backed up by the intel these days.
So COVID happened and came and went.
But
what does that have to do with?
Well, this is the important thing. So 25 million people, approximately 25 million people died around the world, about 1 million in the United States.
Gee.
So I want you to think about this from a perspective. Your taxpayer dollars, even though it was illegal to conduct gain of function research, it was outlawed. Your taxpayer dollars went to China, ended up getting out and killing 25 million. 1 million of those were Americans. So your government took your taxpayers and killed your loved ones. And it makes my blood boil. It's just unfathomable. Unfathomable.
Comprehend. Yeah.
Yep. It's incomprehensible. Yep. And so, but it was really weird because Fauci had come out ahead of the time and said, "Oh, Trump's going to face a pandemic," which is odd, And then you have Fauci now getting a pardon. Well, a pardon basically says you're guilty. You admit your guilt if you accept a pardon, but the president is going to pardon you or ask for or give you or commute your sentence maybe. So when you look at it, it's absolutely crazy when you really sit down and you think about the ramifications of, look how many people lost their businesses, lost their restaurants. And it's because the government didn't do what they're supposed to do, and that is make sure the American people are safe.
And also kind of just stay out of the way of the market.
Well, and stay out of the way. But so anyway, so then you had the January 6th and all that good junk, and, then we had the election. And now Trump gets in, right? And it's really amazing when you sit there and you think about it. I ain't telling you what to believe, who to believe, but I can tell you this. When it comes to our government have been serving the people running the government for the last, basically since Ronald Reagan, really. They have been doing things that line their pockets, but their oath of the Constitution is to preserve and protect the people of the United States. That's part of their oath of the Constitution. And they were doing nothing. They're spending money. I mean, we're $36 trillion in debt. It's absolutely mind-boggling. But then you look at our government, and Trump gets elected, and what is his basic platform? We are going to take back the government from the administrative state. And we are going to use the Constitution to become more constitutional and get back to upholding the oath that every congressman, every member of government takes, that you work for the American people. And I think it's absolutely refreshing. Do I think Trump is a perfect man? No, but neither am I. But I think he's what we need for this country right now.
When you look at the other options available, I'm like, I think we need a business guy in charge,
Well, the only thing the government does is, when you really think about it, the only thing the government does efficiently is waste money. That's it.
The way I've heard it said, this is at a summit camp I went to in Colorado Springs, great. And they had a speaker there, and he says, the only thing that the government can do is push or pull, take or give. But if they're giving, they're taking from another place. And if they're taking, they're taking from another place. Like, they never create anything. Their purpose biblically is the sword, right? To guard. So when they're trying to do things that a government can't do, it usually just gets in the way of the general function of society that the family or church was meant to have. And I think in terms of family/people, I also think that includes the market, just on a practical level. And you see the government get in the way of all this market stuff. Now, some laws in the market are good, like the child labor laws, right? Or different things like that. But other ones, the mask, like, you see what I'm saying? Like, yeah. When I just look at the practical skeleton of our society, like, I think when the government digs its hands in all this different stuff, like the clip of Elon Musk, I should really pull it up, on that Rogan podcast he did, where he's like, there's like 2 government agencies created every year, but it's like, what are they doing, right? To get this rocket launched, tell the rocket story. You know it better than me.
Yeah. So, Elon Musk, he's sitting here and he's building a new rocket, the largest rocket that, and I'm sure most of you know, the largest rocket that has ever been built. And we're only on version 2. There's going to be a version 3, and then my understanding is they're going to go from a 9-meter diameter rocket to a 12-meter diameter rocket at some point. So there'll probably be even a version 4, or it'll be a newer version of the rocket. But literally, on version 1, I think it was like 397 feet tall. Version 2 was like 404 feet tall. And I mean, think about that. 400 feet. That's a quarter mile, right? Yeah. No, 400 yards is a quarter mile. Not 400 feet. Ooh, ooh.
It's like a 24th of a mile.
But the whole point is a 400-foot rocket they could build faster than the government can approve a license to launch the rocket.
They had 25 meetings to go through with 5 different government agencies.
Insane. And when you look at it,
in all these books I've read in organizational like strategy and stuff, company, like especially like the one you recommended by John C. Maxwell, what do they warn about the most? Bureaucracy, middlemen, people that just sit there and organize everything. Or another book I read talked about the manager, like how all of us have like an entrepreneur, a manager, and a employee inside of us. And it's like when the manager gets out of check, I think that's happened with so many government agencies where it's just people managing, moving resources around, but it doesn't really do anything besides filter and constrict progress.
Yeah, there's so many regulations that, it's hard to get anything done. So he could sit there and he had all these rockets lined up, ready to launch, but he couldn't get a launch license from the federal government.
And this is a man who self-taught himself how to make a rocket.
Because
he couldn't buy one.
Yeah, he tried to go to Russia. Originally, he tried to go to Russia and buy their engines.
Who are you? Get away.
And then they were like, we're not going to sell you the engines. So Elon goes, well, I guess I'll get some books and I'll learn how to build a rocket engine. And he did.
Sat with the engineers and mechanics and said, let's do it.
And then, his philosophy is no part is a good part. The more you simplify the design and get rid of parts, the more efficient it is to build it and the less chance for failure. And our government couldn't even approve rocket launches. And here we are in competition, and people don't think about the national security ramifications of this. If China launches and lands people and put a permanent base on the moon and claim the moon, even though you're not supposed to be able to claim it, but if they're the only ones there and they claim the moon and then they set up a weapon on the moon, watch out. Because all I got to do then is wait for the Earth rotation. And boom, you're done.
Yeah. And that sounds crazy, but I'm like, in 30 years, with all this technological advancements, with AI, especially, all those things will cross over between these different strategies, AI development, medical advancement. People will definitely, I think space technology will be a huge deal, especially by the time I have a gray beard.
I think my granddaughter will have the opportunity to be able to go back and forth between Mars.
Like the same as a bus fare ticket,
Well, I might be a little bit more than that, but
like a plane ticket, it'll be cheap.
But it'll be cheap, And then you look at the government, NASA. They're sitting there with the SLS program that costs $4 billion to launch. They've invested almost $12 billion into this rocket, and it costs $4 billion to launch. And Elon Musk is thinking he can build it and launch it. Once he eventually gets to scale,
think about when NASA
between $2 and $10 million. Think about that.
Think about when NASA was actually good, is when they had a competition and they had to innovate.
Yep.
Right back in the 1960s with the Cold War. So
yes, I think Elon Musk is very smart.
Oh,
I don't. and the reason I say he's very, very smart is because you got to look. The guy, first of all, the guy don't care about money, which is smart. I mean, it's good to be smart with your money, but money isn't the end all be all of life. But second, you looked at every time he made money, he'd roll it back into another business.
You know why that he's a multi-billionaire? Most people, when they hit the $300 to $500 million mark, they think I'm at the top of the world. They cash in their own potential. He made not one, not two, but several multi-billion-dollar risk. He could lose all of his fortune.
Yep.
For the sake of helping humanity, according to his worldview. It's very interesting.
Yeah, and when you think about that, like when he bought Twitter, he overpaid for Twitter. He knew he overpaid for Twitter. But free speech was more important than the money that to regain free speech in this country and give a platform for people to express their opinions without being deplatformed. He was willing to give away that $44 billion.
Have you seen all the memes where it's like Elon Musk bought Twitter for $44 billion? It shows them downloading it. I always thought that was funny. Like,
and it's funny because they're like, oh, he's not a very good businessman because he overpaid. The whole point was he didn't care about the money. He cared more about free speech.
But I think it's returned to him because think about for his business, he puts a post out like I'm on the toilet and it can get like 1 billion impressions. Like,
well, yeah.
So.
But then we come to and then you got Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency. To me, would be absolutely amazing if they completely gut the federal government to start with, and then we do the same at the states. The people have got to demand that their taxpayer dollars are being spent wisely. It's just absolutely.
I gotta look up if that's true. Does he actually post 70 tweets a day? I doubt that.
Oh, I wouldn't doubt that.
I know people use it as like a thought mentorium.
But when you look at it, that's all we're saying. Look at where your dollars go. We'll send billions of dollars to go put a fence up. Meanwhile, our southern border is in say Pakistan or India. We'll give them $1 billion to put up a fence, but we won't build a fence on our border. It's absolutely insane.
Elon Musk is kind of a freak in nature. He not only sits on Twitter all day, but he also runs 6 companies. And,
he's got Tesla, he's got the Boring Company, he's got SpaceX. When you sit
his
there,
stocks and all that to manage.
Yeah, the man's worth over $500 billion, but he don't care about money. That's the, everything he did to what he thought would help humanity. And
last week he crossed like oh yeah, did you hear about the video game thing? That was really funny.
Yeah, my suspicion or what I've saw about that, because he's like the number 1 Diablo player in the world, I think he paid for it.
Oh yeah.
But you know what? When you got that kind of money, you can do that.
He kind of has fun in weird ways.
Yes. I mean, listen to the man's got a great sense of humor when you sit there and you listen to it.
You look at this. Like I saw a YouTube short by Alex Mazzi like 2 weeks ago that just came out saying he just crossed $400 billion net worth. Look at the exponential thing of his business. He's already up another $33 billion. It's insane.
And here's the thing: Elon Musk will probably be the
first trillionaire.
The first trillionaire. Which is absolutely amazing and good for him.
And I just think about a cool place we're at.
The guy don't care about money. All he's going to do is take that money and invest it and make another company to hopefully make the world a better place. Because that's how he's very, very concerned that given the current state of the world and the inaction by governments to rein in what I would consider communist and Marxist around the world, the United States was that beacon. They said enough with the government trying to run our lives. And this is where God comes in. Because again, our Constitution and our Bill of Rights it was written that God was the ultimate creator and that it isn't the government that gives you your rights. It is God himself who gave you your rights. So if you look, the government's pushes to be since the early 1900s, when Darwinism came out, was to get more and more God out of our country and get more and more government in place. But let's think about this. Okay? So you have God that you rely on, that you pray to, if you're a spiritual person, you have God that you rely on. But as the government says, God's not important. Just a made up story, right? That's the narrative. He's not important. Your rights come from the government. Well, if you have no knowledge or concept of God and how he designed the universe and how we were supposed to run the world.
And add that on top of, most people don't understand how government and just general economy works either.
Yeah. But when you take all those factors into consideration, if you push God further and further and further and further and further and further and further out of the picture, then who do people look up to? Just the government. There was so many people.
What happens when there's a power vacuum and authority, and then everyone looks to the government? Look at history.
It doesn't turn out well.
No,
it doesn't. And I mean, we were to the point that our government was literally calling up Facebook. I mean, look at Mark Zuckerberg. He was sitting there. He was letting the government shut down information during COVID, but it didn't stop there. Then it was Trump, if you said the wrong thing, then it was you were ratioed or you were deplatformed.
Didn't Trump just scare him away?
It was the government. It was the government pushing for all this stuff. And we saw how scary it got because you literally could not say the wrong thing or you could lose your job. You were labeled racist, transphobic, homophobic, xenophobic.
Especially these businesses that do advertising on there. And
yep.
They would shut down everything and lose literally all their marketing gone, all their account gone, all their history gone.
And they were destroying people over their thoughts.
Trump just scare him off with something? I heard about that the other day. Like, what was that about?
Well, he's to the point where, one of the executive orders that he signed yesterday, after he took office, one of the almost 200, I think it was, one of them was to prevent the government from censoring citizen speech. The government can have their opinion. That's fine. They can have a stance. That's fine. But the government should not be able to go in and go to Mark Zuckerberg and go, we don't like what this person's posting, so you need to take it down. That's the reason we fought the Revolutionary War, folks, is because, and that's why the founding fathers wrote it in the Constitution. Free speech to address government grievances. If you were in England prior to the separation of the colonies and you stood up against your government, they would torture you and kill you. That is why free speech is so critical. Why do we have the Second Amendment? We have the Second Amendment in case the First Amendment fails. It's to prevent the tyranny of the government from becoming oppressive and taking away people's rights. It's absolutely insane when you think about it. But it is better that ideas die when pitted against each other and that the right idea wins than American people end up in a civil war and kill themselves or kill their fellow man.
Or even
government is your ultimate authority, which means whatever they say goes. I don't buy that at all. Not one bit. Authority comes from God. So then we have Trump, who, what did he run on? Our government is corrupt, and I will tell you, it is. You look at the California wildfires, for God's sakes. It was absolutely unimaginable that you had 80 plus 100 mile an hour winds, and the government, the mayor of the town of LA, decides she's going to fly out to Ghana, even after her campaign promise was she wouldn't do international travel. So she does that. So she breaks the promise to the people. But then on top of it, they had these red flag warnings. And typically what California did in the past was they would bring in the firefighters. They would start the shifts because they knew a fire was eventually going to break out. But because California was wasting so much money, they didn't want to pay the firefighters overtime. So instead of having the extra crews at the fire stations, not to mention vehicle issues and all this good junk, no brush clearing by the state. Oh, by the way, California pays 13% taxes, the highest in the nation, if I'm not mistaken, or close to the highest in the nation.
Not to mention the market inefficiency, but...
And then they decide it's a good idea to drain a 117 million gallon reservoir to repair it during the height of the fire season. I mean, think about the gross incompetence. Now, in World War II, there was this saying, good enough for government work. Think about it. It meant that you were doing the best you could to make sure that you gave the fighting soldier, the American fighting during World War II, you gave them 150% because their lives depended on it. Well, when we lose standards and we lose excellence, and we don't demand excellence from our government or our people or our workers, what ends up happening? What used to be, no kidding, good enough for government work meant the best of the best is now a punchline because standards have been lowered so much that good enough for government work means I put in enough it's an okay product, we'll send it down the road. Well, that kind of mindset permeates throughout the government. And then pretty soon, where you had a government working for the people, you have a government that is not working for the people. And that's all Trump was pointing out, is that the government does not work for the people. All these unelected, keyword, unelected administrative state who pass all the regulations and rules. See, that all used to be done by Congress. But Congress gave away that power to the administrative state. Well, that's what part of the things that Trump is trying to get rid of is, look, you guys need to put out bills that people can read, and it needs to benefit the American people, not waste money. Another example, Gavin Newsom, $24 billion spent on homelessness and nothing to show for it. Homelessness is worse than it was. They spent $24 billion. Could have given every person who was homeless over $100,000 cash and tell them, hey, go leave the state, go find a place to live. And that money would have been better spent giving the people $100,000 than letting the government handle it at that point. Because what ends up happening is you have to have all these studies and all these things and that things and these things and that things and this thing and that thing. And 3/4 of the money go to the consultants. It doesn't even go to help the people. And then, oh, by the way, we got to hire 200 people or 300 people or 400 people or 1,000 people to run this program. So now 3/4 of the money is gone. It's crazy. It's absolutely insane. And that's what we have to demand our leadership across our governors across the state, they have to do a better job. Their job is to look out for the security of the American people. And I want to, so we'll talk about the Ukraine war, and then we're going to pull up a clip. Well, let's pull up the clip. Let's pull up the clip. This is President Trump in his first term negotiating the withdrawal from Afghanistan. So if you can pull that one up,
Which one?
it should be the first video. Yep, right there. And y'all can, this is one of the persons that was with President Trump during the negotiations of the Taliban, and he tells the story.
We were negotiating
what happened.
When we were negotiating with the Taliban while President Trump was still the president. President Trump wanted to get out of Afghanistan, but he wanted a conditions-based withdrawal. Meaning that you do what we tell you to do, and then we will start pulling troops back slowly as long as you abide by our rules. It's President Trump and Mike Pompeo, and they are talking to Taliban leadership in the room, and they had one translator in the room. President Trump looked at the Taliban leader and said this: I want to leave Afghanistan, but it's going to be a conditions-based withdrawal. And translator translated. And he said, if you harm a hair on a single American, I'm going to kill you. And the translator goes, and Trump goes, tell him.
Translate. Yes.
Tell him what I said. Tell him what I said. Reached in his pocket, pulled out a satellite photo of the leader of the Taliban's home and handed it to him.
Shut up.
Got up and walked out the room.
So, think about that. He wanted out of Afghanistan. He's negotiating with the Taliban. And he says, we're going to get out. Don't want any American troops hurt. If you hurt it, we're going to do bad things. Told the translator, I will kill you. Think about that. If you harm an American soldier, for 18 months, we did not lose an American soldier in Afghanistan to hostile fire. No, we were looking to get out. I mean, my God, it absolutely floored me. You know, I never went to the Afghan theater. I did 2 tours in Iraq, but it absolutely floored me. You know, how the commanders on the ground, because of the politics, literally tied the soldiers' hands on how they could defend themselves. There was points that our standard operating procedures were you had to get fired upon before you could take out a target. Think about that. And here's Trump going, hey, I want out. We're going to do it where the U.S. has dignity. And we're going to get out. But if you think you're going to keep killing our boys and girls, I ain't going to go after your fighters. I'm going to kill you. I mean, think about it. Think about what that says, the message it sends. I ain't going after your everyday fighters. I'm going to take you out. You're the leader. You are responsible for your people. And that's all he was trying to accomplish. So we had that going, and then we saw what happens with lack of leadership under Biden. You pulled the war fighters out first. You left $85 billion worth of equipment. I mean, it was insane. $85 billion. Helicopters, rounds, MRAPs, mine-resistant vehicles. How many Ukrainians would love to have that $85 billion?
Not to mention just the technology that they now have access to and can learn and develop from and parasite.
How many? And then the question is how much? Then the question is how much of that technology fell into foreign actors' hands? China,
And that might have been 40 years with the research has gone and
Exactly.
even out the playing field. So
You had China, you had Russia, you know, we had helicopters, advanced avionics, all that stuff left behind. Treasure trove.
not to mention those fancy
stuff.
helmets that are like
Yeah,
$2 million each. You know,
ballistic helmets, NVGs. I mean, they left it all, and it was absolutely insane. And then, as they're withdrawing, they're telling the troops at the gates guarding the airport, "You can't fire." And 13 of our boys got taken out. Boys and girls got taken out.
husbands, fathers, families, mothers, killed.
Husbands, fathers. Why? Because of incompetence and weak leadership. But actions have consequences. You know, Trump makes this very famous statement about the Ukraine-Russia war, and I know what he's saying, but I don't think he explains it real well when he says, "If I was the leader when Ukraine was invaded, Ukraine would have never been invaded. The war would never happen." So there's about 700,000 Ukrainians who have been injured or killed. There's 820,000 Russians that have been maimed or killed. Now, I don't care whether you're a communist or you're Ukrainian. You can't justify Russia's actions, don't get me wrong. But that's still almost 2 million people who are dead or wounded in the matter of 3 years because of incompetent leadership. Because you have people that want to be all nice with these dictators. And they chew them up and they spit them out because they see the weakness. That's just a fact. So when Trump says it never would have happened, what do you think his conversation, based off of seeing that Taliban video, would have been with Vladimir Putin? Don't do it. Here's how it's going to play out. Because it was amazing. I saw President Biden on the TV just animated. They're going to attack. They're going to invade. They're going to invade. That's what he kept saying. At what point did he pick up the phone and say, "If you invade, this will be the consequences"? I will arm the Ukrainians to the teeth and we will decimate you. They will decimate you. That should have been the message. We'll give them our latest and greatest in technology and we'll decimate you. Trump had already given them a lot of lethal weapons, like 15,000 anti-tank and anti-air missiles, Stinger missiles. He'd already given them quite a bit. But the tragedy out of this whole thing is, once Russia invaded, the President of the United States did nothing to stop the carnage. So all those needless people died. Well, between the two, so basically, theory in war is for every one killed, there's about three. There's about 3 injured. On Russia's side, it's about every 2. So out of every 1 killed, 2 are injured. Ukraine is about a 1 to 4, 1 to 5 ratio, 1 to 3, just depending. But overall, so you would think over about 1 million people between both countries are dead. That's all those husbands, all the wives, all the children that aren't going to be born into this world because of weak leadership. But Biden was sitting there, he's jumping up and down. Oh, they're going to invade. They're going to invade. And he didn't pick up the phone and he didn't call and say, "If you invade, we will arm them to the teeth." So then Russia invades. And then what happens? And I've kept very much abreast about about the Ukraine war. And it just makes me want to cry. I've been to war. There is nothing glorious about war. It's carnage. That's what it is. You know, good guys die too. I know I've lost a few friends. And it just absolutely floors me that he didn't pick up the phone and make it. But he can't because he's weak. And then you look at all these pardons that he pardoned his family and his son. Well, the appearance is he's corrupt on top of it. So why can't you do the right thing? Well, because too many people have the dirt on you. You can't do the right thing because you're compromised. All Biden's deals with the Chinese, Biden's deal with Burisma, with the sun sitting on the board, no experience in natural gas, absolutely insane. You know, and they've got it broke. I think it was Comer. He's in there. I can't remember if he's in the House or the Senate. But Comer, he's got a book out. He released it a couple weeks ago. It's been the number one, but it lays out the financial crimes of the Biden crime family. But all those people dead because of weak leadership. And I don't get it. Why? And then I sit there and I watch, and then they're like, no tanks in Ukraine. And then they start doing tanks. And then there's none of this, no airplanes, and then they start doing airplanes. If the United...
what Germany did?
In World War II?
Yeah.
Well, Germany's mistake in World War II is they opened a war up on two fronts. That was...
Didn't they go against their word?
Well, yeah. Stalin was in a pact with Germany there for a while, and until they invaded. If it hadn't been for the United States, Germany would have taken over Russia. But we sent the trucks and the equipment through the Lend-Lease program. But why didn't Biden say, you invade? We're giving them everything. We'll give you the weapons you need. You know? And I hope President Trump starts making the Europeans, I really hope that not only 5% NATO spending, which before he was calling for them just to do the 2% spending that they were supposed to be doing, that they haven't been doing. And and he's correct when he says the United States is being ripped off. It absolutely is. We send money everywhere and get nothing in return.
Why don't you talk about the Canada thing?
Well, we'll talk about Canada here in a second. But we'll tie this up real quick. So had Biden given them everything and said, you know, this war would have been over. I mean, Russia is hemorrhaging right now. They've got more people, and I mean, it really upsets me that YouTube censors war videos. Because if we were allowed to see how war is fought and prosecuted, especially in this day, man, we got a cakewalk back in 2005. You know, well, basically from 2001 through 2019, we had a cakewalk compared to what the people in Ukraine are facing. I mean, the drone technology, it's insane. You know, but when YouTube won't let people see soldiers in Ukraine and Russia stepping on landmines, and they won't let people see, because you know what would happen? It's bad for the defense industry. It's terrible for the defense industry, because if people were allowed to see it and see what war is really like, there'd probably be a lot less war in this world. You know, after 9/11, yeah, we were justified in going after Afghanistan. But then we tried to country build instead of just kill the bad guys. And I think what you're going to see, and I pray what we're going to see, is if we have bad actors doing bad things, we're going to take them out. and that President Trump is going to protect the American people. So when it comes to wars, I think Trump's right. It's okay for him to get along with Putin. It's not talking and not standing up for what's right that has led to the countless slaughter of millions of people. And it doesn't have to, like I said, American troops don't have to have boots on ground. Let's give Ukrainians the technology. I mean, when this war ends and Ukraine and I believe in the end, Ukraine will come out on top. They are going to have the biggest technology advantage over any other country in the world. These wonder weapons like the F-35, F-22. I mean, if you really look at it.
What do you call that? It's like, just like in the World War, it was almost innovation. Like, they're going to have a lot of innovation from combined technology through allyship, but also just, the innovation out in the world war field. They're going to be very powerful as a nation because of just the need for competition to grow in technology. So they'll have more powerful weapons than anyone else.
They'll end up being probably the world's number one arms exporter of drone technology.
It started with those little drones that were rigged with like those little explosives, and then now they're doing like full on.
Now they got carousels that they can load grenades in, and they can fly, and they got aiming points that take in consideration the wind. They get the aiming point over the latch of the BMP or the BM-2P2s or the different tanks that Russia has, and they drop them. And it goes right down into the hatch, and it just takes them out. And, of course, the way Russian equipment's designed, because the ammunition, the tank rounds are not protected by a blast wall, that when that grenade cooks off, it cooks off all those tank rounds, and everybody in that tank dies.
Massive explosion.
And the tanks, they got tanks shooting 200 meters up into the air. But that's all because of weak leadership. All those dead people are dead because of weak leadership. And it's sad, and then we have the sacred cows that, in the military that, we can't take the pilots out of the cockpit. With the technology we got, could you imagine if we took the pilot out of the cockpit? Cockpit's not politically correct. Flight deck is what they call it now. Well, the word cockpit. Think that that's how it got its name. Now they call it flight deck to be more politically correct. But the whole point is in these wars with the technology they've got, anybody, if I was an American pilot, I would be insisting that they take me out of the planes, and that I'm a backup pilot in the event of a loss of communication with the drone fighter, because you're in this day and age, if you're in a plane and they've got any kind of tech worth a snot, you're dead. And I'll put it even into a better perspective. Had the United States got the Ukrainians and trained them on F-16s and got their pilots to be trained on F-16s and started getting their youngest generation, their 18, 19-year-olds, on F-16s and F-35s, we wouldn't see that. We would have never seen the drone technology that we see today on the battlefield, because you would have had the air dominance. So it has a rippling effect. It basically makes a $200 million plane. It makes it a very expensive weapon that you don't want to lose. Where Ukraine is sitting there in the beginning of the war, they were just putting explosives on a cheap off-the-shelf drone and it was costing about $550. Now the drones have gotten expensive because of more expensive because of the jamming technology. Now Ukraine has fiber optics drones, and Russia has fiber optic drones with a fiber optic cable to prevent the jamming. They go 10 kilometers. They have a spool.
So the drone is literally tied to a cord.
Tied to a cord.
Huh.
10 kilometers is about what they can go. But it's actually more efficient because it takes one drone to, if there's multiple targets and they got the carousel on it, they can sit there and they can take out multiple drones that easy. So it's just insane. But that's what happens with the incompetence, with incompetent leadership. So, where did you want me to go? Do you remember?
Canada.
Oh, and now you got Canada, right?
So what's I guess the next topic that I'm curious of, because I haven't watched the news in like a year, good or bad, I'm out of the loop. What is going on with Canada and Trump saying let's annex Canada, from what you know, and then what's your thought on it as a veteran?
From a security standpoint and from a population standpoint, if Canada and the United States were to merge, it would be a huge benefit for both countries.
Great fishing too.
Well, there's great fishing in the U.S., but there's amazing fishing in Canada also. But Canada's got the resources. They've got tons of oil. Majority of our oil comes in from Canada because we have a different type of crude. We export most of ours, but the whole point is even Canada. You look under Trudeau. Trudeau during the trucker strike or the trucker shutdown literally went in, declared in a state of emergency, and then immediately started taking and seizing Canadians who were involved in the protest against their own government because they were wasting so much money and making it unaffordable to live in Canada. On top of it, Canada was taking in all kinds of immigrants, just like the United States. And the immigrants were getting a better deal than the people that had literally built the country. Generations and generations and generations of Canadians. And generations of Americans. I'm telling you, you don't know how close we came to an authoritarian government. You don't know how close we came. We came super close. Even Canada. But Canadians stood up. And now you see in Britain, free speech is almost non-existent. If you say anything about anybody of a different ethnicity, they're putting people in jail. Even though it's truth. In Britain, you have a bunch of kids being raped by Indian or Pakistani, I can't remember which one. Middle Eastern. Well, but anyway, the whole point is you can't call out that, look, these people are gang raping our children. Think about it. It's absolutely insane that you can't talk about it. And they're putting people in jail for their speech. And it's crazy. So I pray Trump says, we'll sell you all the weapons you want to make up your armed forces. But we ain't going boots on ground. It's your responsibility to take care of your neighborhood. It's your turn to pony up the dollars. And if you want an American base, you're going to pay us to have our troops there. If not, we're going to pull out. That's what we're going to do. I would love to see that. People go, oh, but China would take over. Well, China's going to take over regardless. If we're going to have to fight the world, we might as well fight the world. But let's hope the Europeans will kind of wise up and say, hey, we like the fact that you can say what is wrong with your government. And with Canada makes about $200 billion off of us, about $100 billion in defense. We pay about $100 billion for their defense, really. And then in tariffs, it's about another $100+ billion that, they charge, that we pay them. So to absorb Canada, I think you make it a territory, and then you give them a constitution, and then they develop their constitution, but then you break Canada into multiple states. And then you start slowly approving those states and adds to the states. There's only 41 million people in Canada. And so if they take Canada, or if they can come to agreement that we're going to annex Canada and they're going to be part of the United States, the cool thing is Canadians get the United States Constitution, where your rights come from God, not from government. And it'd be a huge win, because between their energy production capabilities, I mean, it would be a powerhouse, just an absolute powerhouse.
Entire continent.
Well, Trump already designated the southern border a national security issue. And, when it comes to that, he labeled the cartels as a terrorist organization. And there's a lot of cartels in Mexico, in South America. And it's sad. I remember in the 80s, there was some issues with Mexico. They were poor, but they didn't have the drug violence that it isn't as prevalent as it is today. It's basically a narco state anymore. You hear Acapulco, you hear shootings around Acapulco. They got security guards all around the resorts in Acapulco, but you don't dare go off the resorts because it's liable you'll be kidnapped or killed. It's just sad to see countries do that. But again, that's weak leadership. And you can see it throughout history. Weak leadership leads to disastrous consequences. The people, because guess what? The politicians you elect, and when they decide to send you to war, very few are sending their kids. And they're sure as hell not going. Could you imagine if Congress authorized war and the Senate and the House of Representatives and the president had to go be on that foreign soil during that war? I wonder how long it'd be before we would find a better solution. I mean, think about it. Yeah. You look at 9/11. 100% justifiable. You look at Iraq, I tore up my body for nothing. My friends died for nothing. They died for each other, trying to keep each other safe. But you look at Iraq, we were fed a line that there was weapons of mass destructions that didn't exist. Hindsight 2020, George Bush was upset that Saddam tried to kill his father in Kuwait, and that was his vengeance. Yeah, well, a lot of American boys and girls paid with their lives for that petty stuff. Figure it out, and all you had to do is do a decapitation strike and say, look, you'll be friendly towards the United States, or we'll keep killing you. Not the citizens, but we're going to go for the leadership. You got to take a stand, or you stand for nothing at all. But just absolutely phenomenal, But you look at everything that Trump is doing. He is literally doing it for the American people, I believe. Now, he could prove me wrong, and if he does prove me wrong, I voted for him. But if he does prove me wrong, you bet I'm not going to hold my tongue. I've got expectations. And I think the American people need to have expectations. I think the American people need to demand that their government work for them. And if not, let's recall them all. The people that are voting down bills and holding up bills that prevent the deaths of Americans from illegals and fentanyl. I mean, we're losing 100,000 American citizens every year. That's more than we lost in the entire Vietnam War. Every year are dying from fentanyl or dying from drug overdoses. 100,000 a year. Think about that. We have cities in the United States where it is safer for an African American man to be deployed to a war zone in active combat than it is for them to reside in that city. Think about that. It's more safe for them to be in active combat, statistically, for them to reside in the inner cities of some cities of this country. It's absolutely mind-blowing. But yet, we don't think about those things. You know, we just don't think about it. So what's next with Trump? I'm praying he's going to do the right thing. I really am praying that he's going to do the right thing. You know, I believe God is the ultimate kingmaker. I'm not saying Trump is a king, but he puts, throughout history of the Bible, you can see where he put the leaders that needed to be there to affect change. And people go, but he's not a godly man. I don't know his heart. I don't. I haven't had a conversation to know his heart. But I also know that what did God do? Was it David?
So I've been reading through the Old Testament, and as far as I understand, like God's leadership, like let me pull up Leviticus 26 just for a second. This will be worth it. So, wonder why we're not getting impressions of political stream, YouTube.
It isn't really political. It's just more to get you to think.
Yeah, I'm just joking.
I know.
So this is like what happens when you know, God just kind of talks about. I'm just going to read this chapter. I think it'll be worth it. You'll see it. So it's like blessings for obedience, and the next thing is punishment for disobedience. So let me zoom this in, get rid of these ads, and then all right, boom. So this is for blessings for obedience, just for the Israelites, but I think this could apply to a lot more than just them in terms of just like general leadership stuff. So you shall not make idols for yourselves, or erect an image or a pillar. You shall not set up a figured stone in your land, or bow down to it. For I am the Lord your God. You shall keep the Sabbath and reverence my sanctuary. I am the Lord. Basically, respect God, right? So carrying on. If you walk in my statutes and observe my commandments and do them, then I will give you rains in their season. The land shall yield its increase. The trees of the field shall yield their fruit. Your threshing shall come to the time of the grape harvest, and the grape harvest shall come to the time of the sowing. You shall eat your bread in full and dwell in your land securely. I will give you peace in the land, and you shall lie down, and none shall make you afraid. I will remove harmful beasts from the land, and the sword shall not go through your hand. You shall chase your enemies, and they shall fall before you by the sword. 5 of you shall chase 100, and 100 you shall chase 10,000, and your enemy shall follow you before you by the sword. So we just see here how this just goes on and on, right? About God's blessing, right? You shall have abundance, you shall have peace, you shall yield the fruit in season, right? You shall have good, like, resources will come to you. It's not promising like extraordinary wealth, but it's promising security and safety, and you know, I will make my dwelling among you, and my soul shall not abhor you. Like God will not hate you. I will walk among you and will be your God, and you shall be my people. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, and you should not be their slaves. And I have broken the bars of your yoke and made you walk direct, right? So walking without a burden. This is what scares me. is this. I listened to it like 3-4 times. I was like, whoa. So, punishment for disobedience. This made me think of the, what was it, I'm blanking out. World War II, the Jews. What's the name of that?
Holocaust?
The Holocaust. This makes me think of the Holocaust. But if the Israelites specifically, their people did not listen to God, right? So we see the blessings up here of how God will bless them, security, peace, abundance in their land. 500 people chasing 10,000 soldiers, right? Like strong, safe nation. All right. Look at this one. But if you will not listen to me and will not do all these commandments, if you spurn my statutes and if your soul abhors my rules, so that you do not do all your commandments but break my covenant, then I will do this to you. I will visit you with panic, with a wasting disease and fever that consume the eyes and make the heart ache. You shall sow your seed in vain, for your enemies shall eat it. For your enemies shall eat the seed of your work. Like, think about that. I will set my face against you, and you shall be struck down before your enemies. Those who hate you shall rule over you, and you shall flee when none pursues you. If in spite of this you will not listen to me, I will discipline you sevenfold for your sins, and I will break the pride of your power. I will make the heavens like iron, and your earth like bronze. And your strength shall be spent in vain, and your land shall not yield its increase, and the trees in the land will not yield their fruit. So it just keeps going. Then if you walk contrary to me and will not listen to me, I will continue striking you sevenfold for your sins. I will let loose the wild beasts against you, which shall bereave you of your children, and destroy your livestock, and make you few in number, so that your roads shall be deserted. Think about that. The road shall be deserted, right? Nothing going on. Everyone's gone. I'm sure you saw that in the war zones, right? Just empty roads, dead.
Oh, yeah. Destroyed. Everything laid to waste.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, I don't think the Jews died because of God's judgment. I think the Jews died because of an evil man named Hitler.
So, all I'm saying is, like, just looking at the contrast of when you do God's will versus when you don't.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%.
Just, obviously, this isn't really, like, it just keeps going on and on. And, but it does say in verse 40. So it just keeps going on, like how God will just slowly destroy them. You shall eat the flesh of your sons, you shall eat the flesh of your daughters in one spot. I will lay your cities waste and make your sanctuaries desolate, is another verse. Then the land shall enjoy its Sabbaths as long as it lies desolate while you're in your land, and the land shall rest and enjoy its Sabbaths without you. Basically is what's saying here. But here's what verse 40 says, and I think this is important. But if they confess their iniquity and the iniquity of their fathers and the treachery they committed against me, and also walk contrary to me, so that I walk contrary to them, basically it goes on and on saying, like, if they repent of all this stuff, is humbled and they make amends for their iniquity, then I will remember my covenant with Jacob, I'll remember my covenant with Isaac, and remember my covenant with Abraham, and I will remember the land. And it keeps going on.
The long version of you're going to reap what you sow.
So my whole point here, just to bring it to completion, is look at what happens to God makes a covenant with a nation and with a people, and this also applies to the gospel, right? When you don't focus on God, everything slowly gets destroyed. Like the first verse when it says, I will bring panic to you, you shall flee when no one's chasing you. Just think about how scared people are now of nothing. But when you look at a strong nation, why are they strong? They trust in the Lord.
Yep.
Right? So it's just like when we trust in God, like one of my friends who has done very well in business, he's 24 and stuff, is doing a lot of good things for God and writing some cool papers on science and all that. He said that, like, the Christian ethic, just think about how the world changes. Families aren't broken. You don't need to spend as much money on defense because you have a strong border, right? You don't need to spend as much money on resources because people begin to think efficiently. Because it's all about the gospel. And then God brings, when we're focused on serving God, then God allows us to redeem our strength.
But it also tells you how to live.
Yeah.
People, whether you're a believer or not, I will never save anybody, ever. That is God who will save somebody. I can plant a seed. That's all I can do. And I can try to make it grow by just being a good friend and talking the word with people. But overall, I ain't going to save anybody. God is going to save them. I just want people to be thinking about salvation, and I want them to be thinking in godly terms, based on the Bible, how we should conduct ourselves. You know, we wonder why we're having all the issues that we have in America. It's because we've turned our back on God. I'll be honest. That's my thoughts in a nutshell.
That's the core issue. That was my point earlier, is if we don't trust in God, we'll have a dam will break with 1,000 leaks, and people try to patch the leaks, but it's just like, who will let the water overflow? You know, it's not all these little issues. It's the core of it is, are we trusting in God and doing what we're made to do? And the answer is no.
And are you a righteous man or woman? You know, I mean, really think about it. If you don't have a healthy perspective of what is true and false in this world, it's easy to be led astray. Think about that. It's easy to be led astray. So when people don't focus on the important things and don't focus on God, we end up with leaders, you know, that are terrible. George Bush, Joe Biden, you know, Obama, the Republican out of Texas, Dan Crenshaw, makes more money off the stock, has a better trading average than the NASDAQ and S&P 500. Well, yeah, it's because they're basically insider trading. The people on that particular committee. Nancy Pelosi's outperforming, you know. It's insane. But yet we tolerate this. We tolerate incompetence in our government, and I don't get it. You know, and by no means do I think Trump is God. I think he's a tool used by God, but I think he's a truth teller. You know, he would always play that song. You can't always get what you want, but you just might find you get what you need. That was in his first campaign. Yeah, it isn't that. It's the fact that he'll tell you the information you need. You know, it was so refreshing when you look back at the debates. You know, when he debated all the Republicans on the thing, he goes, I know how it works. I buy you guys. He said it right on national television. I buy you guys. Because
Buy what?
I buy the guys. Well, you didn't pay your fair share in taxes. And what did he turn around and say? You're the ones that wrote the rules. You've been there for 30 years. You don't want me to have that tax break? Get rid of it. But you didn't, and you have it in 30 years, but now all of a sudden you say you're going to change? I mean, come on, people. It just blows my mind. What are we thinking? I pray President Trump is successful with what he says he wants to do. You got to restore the rule of law. You know, you just got to. But what I really hope is that in the pocket of every single individual that ends up getting deported, good and bad, with his executive order on the remain in Mexico and all that good junk, I hope they take a copy of the Constitution back. And they can go back to their country and say, you know what? Maybe we should focus on fixing our country. Maybe we should say, if you want the same freedoms you enjoyed in the United States, go back and take it to your country. Whether you're
the impact of one good man, imagine if they all said, you know, imagine just 20 great dudes said, let's make an organization that's focused on fixing Mexico. You know, like, It'd be crazy. It'd take a lot of work, but they could do
It
it.
would take a lot of work, but like I said, I get why people come to America, but we have to be a country of laws. We just have to be. Because if you're going to let in murderers and rapists, and our government did that. They knew they had criminals coming into this country, and they let them in. It's insane. If you had a known murderer who got out on bail, are you going to let him come into your house? No. Then why would you let him come into your country? I mean, we have our own state governments. We have our own state governments that are doing what? They're cities that are harboring illegal aliens. And I get why they want to come here. I get it. I do. And the 90% are probably decent people. But you got to be able to make it on your own. Especially when we have all the fentanyl and all the drugs and all the crime and corruption going on in this country. We don't need other people's problems.
You know what I also found interesting in the Old Testament is for 99% of like crimes dealing with life and death, how God just says like, cleanse your land of them. And either send them to the city, like the 6 cities in Jerusalem where they could run to, like if they had killed someone unintentionally, or all of society, even against their own wife, was meant to be like, if they are not honoring the Lord, if they're, our culture hates this. This will probably get me canceled. I don't care. It's like they would literally kill the people that committed these iniquities.
Yeah.
Murderers, all and there's a whole list. Read Romans 1. But people who committed those sins. But imagine the culture if all those people were not in the culture, right? The people who had done those things and were not ready to change their ways. Imagine the culture if they were not in those towns. How clean and pure the city would be, and the worries that you wouldn't have as a local person. As rough as it sounds, I think more life would be lost versus the one life of a death penalty versus these people running wild and killing innocent people. It's just interesting to me.
It's not even illegal aliens. I mean, even in the cities, I find it ironic that people charged for non-felonies, like maybe misdemeanor assault, are spending more time in jail than people that are robbing and raping and killing people. I just find that unbelievable. People that commit process crimes, white collar crimes, spend more time in jail than murderers do. How insane is it that you have somebody that killed somebody? How insane that you let them out with no bail? And then you wonder why they go and do it again? Because there's no repercussions. You're literally letting somebody out who says, I'm willing to take human life, which in God's eyes, we are all created in the image of the Lord, meaning we all have value. And you're telling this person who has committed the crime, you're going to let them back out on the street to potentially commit another crime after they've killed a fellow human being created in the image of God? Think about that. That's what we're doing in this country. So can Trump fix it? I pray he does. I think he's telling a lot of truths. 4 years ago, look at it. Mainstream media was the only way to believe your media according to it. That's the beauty of the internet. That's what I love about the internet. Is we don't get stovetyped into beliefs because of what's being pushed on the mainstream news. I mean, you would sit there and you would hear an article from CNN and Fox and ABC and CBS, and they all had the same buzzwords. But we had journalists that were so lazy That when the federal government said, well, this is what really happened, they took them for their word. They didn't even investigate it. You know, just absolutely insane. The government is the gospel. That, my friend, is super scary. Well, the government said it, it must be true. No, it's not. Truth is truth. Murder is wrong. Period. I don't care if it's even in a. I get it. You catch your wife in bed and you you do that kind of thing. I get the reaction, but see, God has given us that ability to override the anger and fear, and if we're living in peace, why I would be terribly upset. I ain't going to bed. I ain't going to jail for the rest of my life if my wife was not faithful. That's just dumb. I'll show you. I'll take you out, and then I get to spend the rest of my life in jail. No, you're an idiot. That's what you are. You're an idiot. I don't care how much you love her. She ain't worth it. Or he ain't worth it. Doesn't matter. But we got to get to the point where we're thinking like that. I mean, it just floors me every single time the death and destruction happen in and around this country and people think it's acceptable. Why? Why is it acceptable for somebody to push somebody else off a train platform in front of a moving subway because you're having a bad day? Why is it acceptable to be robbed on a subway? Why is it acceptable for people to be walking home and just get kids walking home from school and just get taken out by a drive-by shooting? Yet the community can't be armed to take out the people that are taking out their kids. I mean, think about it. An armed society is a very polite society. National open carry. I would love to see it. Real simple fix. National open carry and a national concealed carry. So you have the options. As long as you're not a felon, you can open carry or you can conceal carry.
With or without license, you think?
Well, I would tell a smart person. I've been through concealed carry. It's always smart to be concealed carry for your state, to go through that course, so you know the laws. But at least you can stop it. Somebody's driving down the street, lighting up a whole neighborhood. Imagine if all the citizens came out with guns and took them out. That'd shut it down real quick. Oh, that's too simple. No, it's not. Do you want peace in your neighborhoods or not? Do you want your kids to be able to walk to school without worrying about being shot? Think about it. A gun left by itself can kill nobody. It is a tool. Men or women kill each other.
Not to mention that most, as far as I understand crime, how many legal guns are used in crime? Next to none.
Next to none.
How many guns have you heard in the story? When you actually look at the story, they don't talk about this on the news, obviously, but like, the permit number or whatever it's called on the gun is just grinded off, right?
Oh,
like
serial number.
Serial number of the gun.
Serial numbers, yeah.
So,
Filed off, yep. But I mean, it's just absolutely insane. You imagine, it just absolutely floors me. You know, but the hope is with Trump, like I said, I don't look him as a deity. I believe he could be being used by God to further God's agenda. I 100% believe that. Further his kingdom. Uh, but the only way we keep tyranny out of our lives is to be engaged with our government officials. But see, that in itself is a catch-22. So you have the government, prior to Trump taking over, saying that if you're religious, if you're white, if you're this, if you're that, you are the problem. I mean, think about it. That's insane. Right wing, that's the danger. No, it's not. So you have all the training, and I sit back and it just floors me. You know, I watch a lot of First Amendment audits on TV, or sorry, on YouTube, and it can be interactions with cops. It can be interactions in public buildings, and it absolutely blows my mind. You know, people are going in and they're filming, and people are calling the cops when they're exercising their First Amendment. That's our civil servants calling the cops on our citizens. And then, you know, the First Amendment audits have been, they've been pretty big the last 4 years. And, you know, they'll do it with cops, sheriffs, FBI, even base personnel. You can't film here. You can't film here. Well, because people don't know the law, they're like, oh, sorry, not going to do it. But the people that know the law said, not only can I film here, the Supreme Court has ruled I can film here. It's a public place. So if you're an American and you're out and about, walking around and you see somebody filming, and you think it's suspicious, yeah, you can call the cops. You can. But you might want to take 5 minutes, even if they're walking in front of your building and filming, you might want to take 5 minutes and go, and you can go out there and go, hey, what are you doing? Oh, I'm gathering content for a news story. Oh, okay, film away. You know, but if they tell you to kick rocks, you know what? Kick rocks. They don't have to tell you. If they tell you, it's because of a courtesy. But it depends on your state. Like Iowa doesn't have a stop and ID state, meaning if the police make contact with you in the state of Iowa, if they're investigating and they go, oh, we need your ID because we made contact with you, guess what? You don't have to do that. It's called RAS, Reasonable Articulable Suspicion. What crime do you suspect me of committing? Well, you're suspicious. Well, being suspicious is not a crime. People are uncomfortable. Being uncomfortable is not a crime. But that just shows how little our citizenry know about our own Constitution. You know? And so you got all these government workers.
Let me just cut in here a second. You know how I'm bothered by the education system.
Yep.
I think hopefully Trump pushes some more, instead of, you know, in high school, my teacher, he spent more time trying to break down the Constitution on why it was bad instead of actually teaching us the Constitution in English class. When we're supposed to be writing papers and learning about how English works, he spent all that time to teach liberalism, and it was miserable. And all of us farm kids in the classroom wouldn't take it. But I think about just all these kids who are shy or don't want to like stand up for it. It's just like their minds will be slowly swept away by media and by school. Like school doesn't teach this stuff. So it's like we need to start educating kids also on how our law and economy and
it's called civics.
Civics, yeah. So
used to be a requirement everywhere. Used to be a requirement. Not in every state is it a requirement.
California?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if civics is a requirement. When I think when my kids were in Nebraska, they had a civics test. You had to know how your Constitution functioned. I don't know about Iowa. I haven't really checked because my kids are out there, but I got grandkids coming up.
We didn't really have one in high school.
But knowing how the Constitution works, it protects you from your rights. You know, again, you might have to do a little bit of research on law, but if somebody called, they're uncomfortable, or somebody says you don't belong, or if a cop says you don't belong in this neighborhood, excuse me, I'm an American. I can walk wherever I want as long as it's not restricted or posted. Well, you've been here an hour and a half. I can be here for 6 hours. Does not matter. Well, you don't belong in this neighborhood. You're not telling me where I'm going. And I think it's finally getting, at least with the police, you know, it's getting to that point where, you know, they're paying enough money that they know what is legal. You know, that enough states are paying out, and cities are paying out money that it's now being taught. You have to respect the Constitution. And it's like if Iowa, if open carry is legal, right? I'm walking down the street, somebody calls in, oh, there's a guy walking down the street with a gun. That can't be the only reason to stop and talk to you. Well, somebody called in, they were concerned you're carrying a gun. Is it illegal to carry a gun? No. Okay, have a nice day. Don't have to be rude about it. I don't like the ones that are I really don't like the First Amendment auditors that are confrontational. I like an education piece. You know, but you know, I to the point I have heard auditors drop the F-bomb and call them cowards and you know, oh, you're a little B, that kind of stuff. And I just don't think you have to use that.
And even if like post court, you know, like they arrest you and they're wrong and the city's gonna pay you, it's like you're just gonna waste your own time by making the cop mad. So it's just like, why do that? Why?
It's education.
Just like, why piss everyone off, including yourself, and why escalate the situation versus being a calm and peaceable guy and just being, officer, do I have the right to go?
Yeah. Am I being detained is what I would use.
Yeah.
You know. But it's got to be an education piece. And the thing that frustrates me the most is when I hear, because like I said, I'll watch them from New York, I'll watch them from Arizona. I mean, I watch them across all the states, and I will hear this cop saying, you know, when they talk about the Constitution, well, I was in the military. Well, then you should know the Constitution and what's permissible by law. You know, and that you cannot detain somebody if they're not suspected of a crime. You cannot order somebody to go if you are not suspected of a crime. But the whole point of the conversation is the government workers have been pitted against the American people. And somebody needs to remind the government workers, whether it be military, whether it be law enforcement, whether it be a government worker, that their salary is paid by the American people. And that they need to do their best to make American people's lives easier. You know, and not to be in you know, this police state of, oh, you got to be hyper vigilant.
And I feel like instead of prisons and police officers, like I remember one time my sister got pulled over in like Grundy County. She was 14. Nothing was wrong. They just said, oh, we need to meet our quota so we can get an upgrade at the station. I just remember that really bothering me. I was like, and they just took like 20 minutes of our time. We were late to the movie. So it's just like, well, why don't we incentivize them for lack of arrest? Why don't we incentivize them for the peace of the community instead of filling our prisons up and meeting a quota? You know?
Well, that goes to some of the things that's wrong with the justice system. But the whole point is we got to have conversations. We have to have our government leaders go, hey, folks, you work for the American people. You got to work for the American people. They're not your enemy. 90% just want to try to get through their day, go home to be able to see their kids. I think the coolest thing we could do nationally is if Trump would, it'd be one of the most simple fixes to half of the audits I see out there is and I think this is one law I think California got right. If you get pulled over by a cop or you have an interaction with the cop, if you're suspected of committing a crime or if you're pulled over, they have to say the reason I pulled you over is, and then state the crime.
Do you always see these arrests where it's like the people start questioning the cop and the cop's like, oh, you're resisting.
Yeah.
And then they arrest them, but that's like it's from causality instead of like the actual source reason being nothing. And then everyone's in trouble and mad over nothing, and resources and time are wasted.
Exactly.
So
let's teach our cops, hey, there is enough bad guys out there. Don't go fishing on every American, you know? And I'm not anti-cop. You know, I got a feeling that majority of, given the crime that has been happening in the United States, and the fact that quite a few cops are veterans, I'm sure we got cops out there, I know especially in the big cities, that have huge PTSD issues. I'm telling you, you can only see so much death and mangled bodies and stuff like that before it affects you. And yet we don't sit there and take care of our law enforcement, and we don't take care of our veterans on that. Again, the government letting the people down. And I'm not anti-government by any means. I just think we need to have a conversation. You know, I would love to have a bunch of law enforcement come together and just talk about, why are we doing this? Well, we're in danger all the time. Well, yes, but if you go and interact with the public and you want to assert dominance to control the situation from Jump Street, all you do is piss off the average American. That's all you do.
And you ruin the view of the average cop.
And you ruin the view of the good cops out there that are actually going, you know, hey.
It's just like a sleazy salesman, like the one sleazy salesman you come across.
Yeah.
You forget about all the 20, like
good ones.
Disney has a saying, like it takes like 20 magic moments to make up for one bad one, because like if at like Disneyland or whatever, if someone messes up or the staff drops a drink or whatever, they literally have to give them like all these free rides, just to make it up. So it's just like, that would be a really cool idea, is go interview some good cops and then some bad cops on the street, see what's going on.
I would just like to have the conversations. Hey guys, the average American just wants to be on his way. If you get him for speeding, great. But to sit there and read them the riot act every single time doesn't need to happen. Hey, I pulled you over for speeding. Okay. Just as simple as that. The real bad ones you're going to know. You got DoorDash soon?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. What time are we at?
It's at 4:20.
Okay.
So we'll wrap up.
Okay, we'll try to wrap it up in the next 10 minutes.
Yeah, figure 2 hours is good.
But when you look, so that is what overall I'm hoping Trump is trying to change. The fact that, hey, you work for the American people. This is not about you creating your fiefdom. It's about doing what's right for the American people. And that's what I hope he does. And if he doesn't, guess what? I'll be the first one to call him out. You know, when Trump was announcing his cabinet, and we had in our town, or in our state of Iowa, she was very anti. Joni Ernst was very anti Pete Hegseth. Okay, I'm glad to see Pete Hegseth in, and the reason I'm glad to see Pete Hegseth in is because he's literally been on the ground and he understands how the stupid policies that these leadership people make affect the average soldier and put their life in jeopardy. And when they lower standards to be more inclusive, it's garbage.
It's like painting rocks for you in the Air Force, but out in the field, where
Yep.
it's like
Where
you can't
your life
shoot.
is on the line.
You can't shoot until you're shot. Like,
But you have a guy who is sitting there 200 yards away from you, and you see him pick up their rifle and start pointing at you, but I can't shoot it. I can't shoot at him.
and you lose your career if you shoot
And
first.
Yeah, and I can lose my career. It's stupid stuff like that. You got to give soldiers the ability to defend themselves.
So here's a question for you as we wrap up.
Okay.
How do we, let's say for all the 18-year-old kids out there like me, who there's all this big political stuff going on. There's all this, but like, what's actually going to happen, just like locally for us as Trump gets in? Like,
Don't know. It's
okay.
too early.
I mean, just like around us. Do you think
I
things
think-
will improve or get worse? Like, what do you think is going to happen just around like a local town in any state in the U.S.? What do you think is going to be improving or changing, or even getting worse?
I think they're going to focus on. I think they're going to focus on getting at least. There's about 2 million bad actor illegal immigrants in this country. I think they will focus on those 2 million first.
So some national security stuff.
It's national security, but at the same time, you remove these transnational gangs, MS-13, the Venezuela gang, Trans de Agua, or whatever the heck it was. I can't remember. They get those guys out, you'll see an immediate effect. If he can shut down the fentanyl, we'll stop losing as many Americans a year to drug. If we can get, if he can use the tariffs to pay down the national debt to get to the point where we don't have to pay taxes, then taxes can fund everything else. Then tariffs can fund everything else.
And what's the time frame on that? Like 10 years, he said?
10 years is the most optimistic I've heard.
Yeah.
But
So 10 to 20 years, we may not have as much or even at any income tax if these policies remain.
If they can do what they want to do, his goal is within 10 years.
But if he signed 20 some documents already, I think they're putting up some pretty good groundwork that'd take a lot of time to undo.
Well, there can be legal challenges on anything. That's part of the game.
Think that gas will get cheaper again?
Probably will take a year.
Yeah.
I think gas will get really cheap, especially he's already talked about opening up ANWR, which would be a benefit for Alaska.
Oh, American oil.
American oil.
Would they turn on the pipeline that Biden turned?
The
Shut
Keystone XL pipeline. We'll see what happens on that.
That hasn't been in maintenance for so long. It might take a little while.
Well, they really didn't get a lot of the Keystone XL pipeline. They got quite a bit of it built, but not all of it built. But
So I thought they shut down an actual pipe that was flowing. They were building one that they shut
they
down.
were building one.
Got it.
They build and they killed. And like I said, if we find a better technology that we don't have to use hydrocarbons, I'm all for it. But wind is expensive. Every single windmill you see across the state of Iowa or in California has some kind of subsidy to pay for it.
Usually takes a lot more energy to put up than they actually make.
And
the materials are very hard to recycle.
Eco-friendly.
Very hard. Now they're starting to figure out how to recycle them, but it's a very long and tedious, expensive process. And I would just love to see what would happen if subsidies went away.
And it would be just awesome if the federal government would say, hey, if you create a car or, set a goal, the first full-size pickup truck that gets 50 miles to the gallon, that develops that engine, that company gets $1 billion. Think about it. $1 billion if you can make a pickup truck.
Is there any stories in history where they did that and like something good happened? Like where they're like, go do this and then
it's better than giving away billions of dollars.
Yeah.
What if we sat there and we said, okay, you cure cancer, or this type of cancer is the number one killer. Okay, it costs Americans $10 billion a year. Put a $10 billion bounty on it to cure that type of cancer.
And then pharmaceutical might actually do some cool stuff.
and then you just keep going down when it comes to that. I mean, but it's better to have a bounty there that a company can shoot for, that, hey, if we know kid can cure this cancer, we get $10 billion. And then you go on to the next one. You know?
So some changes are happening, or it's potentially better market stuff, potentially less government spending, which will help everything. Some tariffs getting put in.
Wow.
And
I think the tariffs will be the biggest game changer.
And how so? Like, explain that in our last 5 minutes. What do you think that means? What's a tariff, and what's it all do?
So a tariff is a charge on a good entering the United States or entering another country. It can go both ways.
So if I'm from China, I'm selling a pencil to the U.S. If it's 20 cents a pencil, they might charge 2 cents or something. Like, how would that work? Is it a percentage, a commission?
It depends on what they set the tariff at.
Is it
say 25%?
So is it like of the revenue that they charge, or is it of like weight?
No. So like, you have a widget that is made in Canada that costs $100. Well, in order to bring it in, they got to pay $25 to bring that item in, if it's a 25% tariff.
So there's a lot of room for younger American business owners to start.
Well, but the thing is you look at it from a supply chain standpoint. It would help if they can't compete. Then they'll want to build their business inside the United States.
And wouldn't that also encourage other countries to work on their economy?
Well, absolutely.
And that would actually be beneficial, because, like, let's say Mexico, if they're trying to get in here and work, what if they're just like, well, what if we worked here? And then would that help their own country improve, kind of deal? Could that encourage growth in other countries?
It could. Well, like look at the EU. We'll kind of wrap it up on the EU.
Got it.
Okay. EU is short natural gas and petroleum. We've got so much of it. We could be their supplier and help bring. And then the cool thing is that helps bring down their costs, because they're not paying so much money for fuel. But you incentivize innovation, but you don't.
And we could sell to allies instead of buying from our enemies.
Exactly. You know, it's kind of ironic that Trump said, hey, Germany, what are you doing with the Nord Stream pipeline? You know, getting all this gas from Russia. What happened as soon as the Ukraine war broke out? Because Europe was dependent on Russian gas, they had to keep letting the gas flow. Versus if they had alternative sources and had big LNG ports along the coast of the EU.
What's an LNG port?
Liquefied natural gas.
Yep.
If they had that, then they could have shut off the Nord Stream pipe. Ukraine could have said, we're not pumping gas through there. EU have their back. Everything come from the United States and Canada. Friendly people. And what happens to the Russian economy? And then you put the sanctions on like they did. What happens to the Russian economy? They cannot afford to fight the war. If Russia will not make it through this year. Right now, my prediction is Russia will not make it through this year, through 2025.
Because Trump's in and all the stuff that will be happening soon, or?
Well, because they're ramping up the sanctions. They're cutting off the oil, and then on top of it, Ukraine has been focusing on blowing up Russia's oil infrastructure. They're importing a lot of their refined products, but the problem is they're having problems because of the sanctions importing refined products. So, you know, Russia's interest rate is 20,000 is 21 or 23%. That's to get a bank loan for a house. 23%.
What's a credit card out there, you think? Man,
it's got to be 50%.
Oy.
But Russia's on a war economy, and Russia's forcing the banks to take out loans. that they're never going to be able to pay out. And like I said, they're already talking about confiscating everyday ordinary Russians' savings, with the exception of like 13,600 rubles, which is nothing.
It's like how many months' salary? Like not that much.
I don't have those figures, but it's
13,000 rules. How do I spell rules?
RUBLES. BLES.
Yeah. Rubles to dollars. You said 13,000? So that's $130. So like 2 tanks of gas and...
Now, granted, Russia's, like the average Russian makes, I think, $8,000 to $10,000 a year.
So let's just say like
maybe 13,000.
Let's just say, off a guess, 1 month of rent.
Yeah, I mean, but that's how bad their economy is going. But that in itself is a danger, because you pin somebody down. Putin, if he knows if he loses control, he is going to die. There's no doubt about it. If the oligarchs, and I've been watching the Russian state media, and people are getting a little bit more bolder on what they're saying about Vladimir Putin. So it's coming. You can see it, because the Russian Duma is rubber stamped. All those people were appointed by Putin, but those people in the Russian Duma are now starting to stand up to Putin and say, you can't seize Russian dollars. Now, that's very dangerous for them, but the whole point is the collapse is coming.
Between Ukraine, Trump, and then the people's restlessness, I think it's a house of cards that will take a strong wind to knock over, but it's coming.
President Trump is very correct when he says we are closer than we have ever been to World War III. And it didn't have to happen. Between the terrorist attacks on Israel, the Russia invasion, China, they're building landing ships that very much could be used in Taiwan. You have Iran, you have North Korea. Everything we see happening right now is because of weak leadership. Never should have happened. Never, ever should have happened. So we better pray that he is able to talk us out of these upcoming wars. Because if he's not, that means my kids and your kids, or if you are a kid, in the next 4 to 5 years, you might want to be in shape, because China's talking 2029 Taiwan. And I've heard rumors.
Will be fought with, what was that one called? Like, no one knows what World War III will be fought with, but the Fourth World War will be fought with sticks and stones.
Very much good.
Like,
and we're getting so good with AI and the quantum computing. I mean, quantum computing has its limitations, but with the AI and quantum computing, I mean,
not to mention nuclear bombs.
Well, what scares me is with quantum computing, you very much could be able to figure out how to create metals that nobody has ever seen before,
and do who knows what,
and do it in seconds or minutes. They've got a quantum computer right now that a regular computer, this one equation would have taken 10,000 years to solve. They solved it in 5 minutes. That's insane.
They'll come up with lasers and all sorts of technology that could just absolutely...
Energy weapons.
We're going to get really good at destroying our own selves, basically.
Which is why I think Elon Musk is right, saying, hey, we might want to put people on the moon and put people on Mars. So we can hedge our bets, because the way we're going, not looking good.
Star Trek is coming. That's the conclusion. I'm kidding.
Hopefully the good Lord is coming and we don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so with Trump, the honest thing is, I don't know. I like what I see, but you need to read on it. You know,
No conclusion.
know
No
what
research.
your beliefs are. But overall, I like what I see. We have to reestablish the rule of law. You cannot function in a society without the rule of law. But the other thing that people don't understand from a psychological standpoint is he is raising expectations of every single one of you. He says you are. He said, basically in a nutshell, he's going, we have the greatest people in the world. We have the greatest people in the world. We just need to believe in ourselves again.
I read the book 1984 a little while ago, and I heard a thing from Trump. It was some short or something. I was probably doom scrolling, wasting time, and it was like, if you really think that America could be recreated again, if it fell down after in today's world, think twice. Like, we have something beautiful here. We need to protect it.
Absolutely.
And I'd say like America's kind of the last anchor of freedom when you really think about it. So
we can be a free country as long as we're willing to keep
we
it.
can help free other countries.
And we can help. Could you imagine if Trump's stance was, hey, EU, how about you adopt the Constitution of the United States? I'll eliminate all tariffs, but give people free speech. Give them the right to bear arms. Give them protection from unreasonable searches and seizures.
And I think that's good instead of just saying,
remain silent.
I've heard small-minded people, in my opinion, say, oh, America should just like be the one world nation and just control the world so everyone's free. But then that's bad, because what happened, then you'd have one or two governments that would, go bad. It's good to have a lot of governments that are free. So that way they check the other ones, because right now it's just like America, Canada. What other countries are really free thinking like that? Like really, yeah, it's all going down. So if we had like, imagine just a world that there was 5 free governments that had a lot of influence instead of just 1 or 2, it'd be a really good world.
Canada's got their issues.
We all do.
This is our suggestion. I really wish Trump would say, hey, let's make sure we have copies of the American Constitution for these people to take back so they can make the changes in their country. And go, I experienced the freedom in America. And while I didn't get a stay because I came there illegally, I do have knowledge of how the Constitution works.
Inspire people.
Let's inspire people to change their governments in a good way. And because we got to work on our own. But Alan has to go and DoorDash, and I got to go home and check on the wife. But I just pray. I really do pray that Trump can do the things that he says he's going to do, and I hope he holds up his word. Can he deliver 100% of everything? No, but I think he'll try. I mean, the man was literally the man, if you really break it into a nutshell, because the government was coming up, whatever you believe, I don't care. But the government was coming after that man. And you know what he said? And he made this comment before he left office. He goes, I'd like to see how many people would support me if I lost it all. He made that comment before he left after his first term. And you know what? He was willing to go to jail. And I think that tells you
he has the heart of a leader.
He has the heart of a leader. He was willing to lose his billions. A man who could have sat back and just golfed the rest of his life. Man's 78. He's got a lot more days behind him than he does ahead of him. Man was 78, and he was willing not only to lose it all, but they were going after his family. And the man didn't buckle. I think of very, very few men who could have handled that pressure. Very, very few. So that's the one thing I love is
the fire of New York real estate.
He's forged in the fire, and I have seen men fold for a heck of a lot less. So let's go ahead and wrap this up with a prayer, and we'll get out of here. And dear Lord God, Lord Jesus Christ, we ask you to bless this nation. Lord, we ask that your will be done, that our government leaders make righteous moves that glorify you, that they remember that they work for the American people. And Lord, we ask that you guide and bless our leaders so that they may do your will and make this country and make the world as you proclaim it should be. Heaven as it is, earth as it is in heaven. That is what we should be striving for, Lord. And Lord, we ask that that you work on people's hearts and make people think about what they truly believe in. And we ask that you just open up people's hearts to what is right and what is righteous in your eyes, Lord. Lord, we ask this in your name. In Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
Amen. By the way, so fun fact. You all have a great night.